Hey, welcome back to TWiP Pro Image Critique number 16. Troy Miller is in the house to help me discuss this week's and last week's submissions. This is TWiP. All right, we have a literal gaggle of images to go through for this week and last week's image critique submissions. Troy Miller is back from the volcanic island over down in Hawaii. He survived the lava flow to make it back just to do this image critique. Troy, were you like being chased by the blob down there? Like how was it?
No, I wish. No, it was very safe. That side of the island is closed off. Well, around the flow where the flow is and stuff. So no, we couldn't get in there. So we just enjoyed the rest that Hawaii had to offer.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And no drone flights or anything, right?
No. Well, my drone was being repaired, so I didn't have it with me. But there was a lot of news that drones were off limit during that time, at least in that area.
Yeah.
Drones were not allowed. There's a lot of safety helicopters flying around, and there was a news helicopter flying around, and there's a lot of emergency vehicles in the area, so it's a good thing. We don't need drones in the air.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, fly responsibly. We had an offline conversation about some people that tend not to fly responsibly.
Right.
I think the rule for drones is don't be an idiot, and you'll be fine. Yeah. Just don't be an idiot.
Please, yeah, because we all want to fly our drones for a long time.
Yeah, at more than 5 feet. That would be,
yeah, new FCC regulation. All right, you can only fly at a 10-foot hover.
Right, for
nowhere near people
for 2 minutes at a time.
Unfortunately, yeah.
All right, man, let's dive in. We've got a lot of submissions to go through. We've got 17 images to dive into, so we're going to be pretty quick on these, but we'll try to make sure we give each one its due. The first one is from Zachary Muddyman. He calls this one Thorn Crown Chapel. Here we go. What do you think of Thorn Crown Chapel?
I love it. This is the kind of place that when I'm on vacation or I'm out looking for places to shoot that I hope to find one of these. And also, what a cool place to shoot a wedding. That would be awesome. I love that.
Yeah, it's very majestic. Yeah, the thing that struck me initially about this image was the symmetry. It's like almost perfect symmetry in there. Everything from how the girders, the steel beams on the left and the right, I'm assuming those are steel, on the left and the right, how they intersect with the corners of the frame, how much of the bench he's showing on either side in the lower left and right of the frame. Yeah, it's the only thing that you can get for clues that this is not a mirror reflection from one side to the other is the patterns in the floor and the foliage outside. Other than that, all the architectural items in here are they're pretty spot on. What did you think?
No, kudos to Zachary for that, because that's not easy to do. Getting that balance, and you have to look at that in camera, hopefully, and get that all tweaked and balanced just right. So that's a really great job, and that's not easy to do. And plus, something like this, it's just visually overwhelming, so you can get sort of drawn into that and not pay attention to that balance. And this image really requires balance. I would recommend to Zachary that maybe you bring the exposure down a little bit, increase those blacks. I think it could use a little bit more saturation, and try to recover some of those highlights in the background. I know that's probably sky and it's a little far away, but it's drawing our eyes out the windows, which isn't a bad thing. I just think that the whole image is overall a little too bright. Mm-hmm. This would have made a really great HDR, something that's a natural HDR, but I think this image could have really, really benefited from some HDR treatment.
Yeah. Very cool submission, though. So thank you, Zachary, for putting this in.
Yeah, I love the image.
All right. Next one is from Andrea, also known as Andy S. within the TWiP community. She calls this one Ends. What do you think?
Oh, it'd help if I switched to that image, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I'm still enjoying the other one.
You're still in Hawaii. That's where you are.
Yeah. Ends. Oh, this is cool. This is like a big cactus-y thing.
Uh-huh. When I looked at this one, it made it, I don't know if you guys have this in Southern California, but in Chili's up here, it's either Chili's or Chevy's. I forget which one. It's a chain restaurant. But they have this thing called the Awesome Blossom, which is, remember that?
Yeah.
It's like an onion that's fried and cut like this kind of.
Yeah, yeah. They have them at the Outback as well.
Yeah, Awesome Blossom. That's what this looks like.
This is great. You know, my first thought is, and only 2 images in, and it's great I get to mention infrared. These look so amazing in infrared, just so you know. But speaking to this image, I love the graphical element. I love the pattern, the symmetry. This is fantastic. I don't know that we want the outside to be brighter than the center. I'm thinking try adjusting it so the center is a little bit brighter than the outside, because the bright edge draws our eyes out of the image. And we're not really looking at the center, which is where it's the sharpest and it has the most depth for me. So, right. But fantastic image. Maybe good black and white.
Yeah. That's the question, right? Does color add to this one? Interesting.
Yeah, it's very monochromatic already.
Yeah, and when I look at this, I see size. Like I'd want to see this one. Like printing this small doesn't feel like it would do it justice. Like I'd want to see this wall sized.
Oh, like, yeah, that would be true.
Right? Can you imagine? Like just put in perspective. Like this is looking at this image. Like right now, it's the size of a wall, and you know on the. It's printed and on a wall, and then you look at the like in the foreground, there's like a couple walking in front of those bottom leaves, you know?
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, that would be fantastic. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Really cool. Very cool. Thank you, Andrea, also known as Andy S, for your submission. All right, the next one is also from Andrea. She calls this one Inside Out New. So this is Inside Out.
Ooh, a little compositing, a little digital artistry here. That's very interesting.
You know when I saw this, you know what I thought? I thought it immediately brought to mind, and you're a science fiction nerd too, so you can understand. It brought to mind those habitats that science fiction writers write about for interstellar travel. You know, that are basically small little worlds with ecosystems inside that that many generations later they finally reach their destination, kind of thing. You know?
Yeah, yeah. You know, that's really cool. You know, I looked at this, and right away I was very intrigued with it. I mean, you know, it's something I wanted to spend more time looking at. You know, the compositing is clever. What I would suggest is to kind of sell the story a little bit better is in the blending, you know, let's take out the clouds that are in the ceiling of the building, right? Like, cause those are, it makes sense to see them in the distance, but to see them in the ceiling of the building, I'm thinking, let's bring those down a little bit. And then the windows in the far back, you can see like there's shadows of these windows with the mountain range. Take the windows down, and maybe that way it looks like we're kind of seeing inside this building even further on. Kind of sells it a little bit better. But it's cool concept. Do more of these.
Yeah, this is really cool. I love compositing. All right, very cool. All right, let's move on to the next one. We're cooking with gas here.
We are.
The next one is called Eagle Cliff Falls, and it's from member Howard.
Howard, yeah. Let me look at this. There it is. Okay. Man, all these waterfalls. I want to shoot waterfalls.
Waterfall tripod, neutral density filter, long exposure, and you get some really cool
infrared
stuff. You see foliage and infrared pops into your head.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible.
How do long exposures, the rules of doing long exposures change when you're shooting infrared?
They don't change.
They don't change at all? Unless you're doing infrared on film, then you're like 3 days long exposure.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's a 3-week exposure.
Yeah.
You know, this is really cool. I like the feel of this. I would just suggest, you know, burning down the top left corner a little bit more as we get closer to that waterfall, it tends to draw our eyes away.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe see if there's some detail in that water a little bit, but not enough to make it gray. Just the striations, just to show depth in there.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not a lot to do with this. This is really nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Everything you said, what I would like to see in this, like for when I see flowing water like this, especially a waterfall, I want to see where it hits. Like if there was a version of this where it was zoomed out a little bit, where you can actually see where the water is impacting below, unless this is like at the top of a mountain, there's no way that you could get the shot wide enough to show where it hits, then, obviously don't do that.
Right.
But it would be cool to see the splash of the water that the pool of water that this waterfall is flowing into.
Right. And the other challenge with this image is that everything is in focus. So foreground, there's no foreground, and we have middle ground and background, and that's in focus as well. So, maybe you just couldn't, but depth is really important in an image. And we can do that by light, by shadow, by, our focus. And this one, the background is in focus, just like the foreground is. So it feels flatter than would be ideal.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Add a little depth. Very cool. This is cool. This makes me want to go out and shoot some water today. Maybe I'll do that a little later. All right. So that was from Janik. That was from Howard. The next image is from Janik, and Janik calls this one Misty Morning. It's called Misty Morning. Zoom in on that. There you go. What are your thoughts on this one?
I'm giving it a good look. I mean, right away, the impact is fantastic. I love the center of attention to that little tuft of grass in the foreground. It's brilliant. The composition is amazing. It's hard to critique an image like this because I really, really, really love everything about it. Mm-hmm. Where I would go in this situation is I would look at little tiny details, little things that might distract our eyes. So like the horizontal log or twig on the shore on the far right-hand side kind of leads us out there a little bit, maybe clean that up. Mm-hmm. On the shore on the far left, there's two white spots right where the water and the ground meet. Mm-hmm. I would, tone those down because those are distracting elements. I love the vertical trees, the reflection. And I may suggest taking a little more off the top so that the horizon where the water and the land meet moves up slightly, and that will pull us into the foreground a little bit more. So, but those are little things, those are where you got to kind of tweak and play. And
yeah, I agree. And I hadn't even noticed that twig on the right, the branch or the horizontal white line on the right. So I hadn't even noticed that. But what my only critique of this image is the watermark. So the watermark, is when Tim Engel and I went through these images initially last week, I brought this up as well. Like on an image like this, where the watermark is very similar to an element in the image, it distracts from the symmetry and the composition of the image itself. And then, for me, and I err on the side of why even put a watermark on these images? Like what's the purpose of a watermark on these images? I could see if this is event photography and you're proofing, or you're shooting models and you don't want them to steal the image and put it on Instagram or whatever. I understand watermarking in that instance, but if you're submitting an image for critique, or you're submitting an image that, for whatever reasons, where it doesn't necessarily need to have the security of a watermark on there, it just seems like a detractor. And legality wise, I wonder, from a legal standpoint, that's not really doing anything either, because they could crop it off if they wanted to and all that. So what are your thoughts on that, Troy? Like the whole idea of watermarking an image? Because on an image like this looks literally like fine art. And then I look up to the upper right and it just kind of, it knocks it down a couple pegs for me when I see that big stamp up there.
You know, watermarks are a real challenge, and I agree with 99% of what you're saying, in theory. But then in application, you know, like I've been a very anti watermark guy for a really long time until you've had your work stolen a couple times. And then
Hmm.
you're like, well, that's not cool.
Yeah.
So I think that that a watermark on any image that you put on should be something that doesn't detract from the image, whether you're sharing it on social media, or you're putting it in your gallery or whatever. Make sure that your watermark isn't detracting from the image. So it always kills me to see, you know, a wedding photographer, a portrait photographer that has watermarks that go across the bride.
Hmm.
That I mean, that just ruins the image, you know. Put it very cleverly in the image somewhere, reduce the transparency if you really don't feel comfortable with doing that. However, like my clients, they want to build wedding albums and they want to do wall portraits. If they pull an image off social media or something like that, that's not what they want. My clients don't want that.
Right.
So I'm not worried about those watermarks as much.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah. Like the watermarks, I think that could be a whole different. Let me pull this up here on the screen. I think it could be a whole different conversation, like when to and when not to watermark, or even the legalities and this sort of mindset behind watermarking. Should you or shouldn't you do it? The other thing that I was talking to Tim Engel about was, and I want to know if you've seen this, Troy, this phenomena, I call it, of, and I've seen this mostly in the model photography genre, of photographers that use models as their avatar. Have you seen that at
I
all?
have, yeah.
That bugs me. I
That
don't know. It just bugs me.
I gotta say, yeah, I gotta say, it's a bit odd. You know, it's a bit confusing, and I really don't understand why you would do that. I mean, one of the whole things about social media is wanting to be recognized for who you are, recognized for your work.
Right.
So use a piece of work for you that's iconic,
Hmm.
something that's gained a lot of attention. Um,
Yeah.
and use that, you know, use your
Hmm.
face or use one of your images
Or a
as your
logo.
avatar.
Yeah, yeah. That's I want to get Tim on. There's another photographer. There's a couple photographers I've seen do that. But there's Tim does it, and there's another photographer up in or here in Sacramento that does it as well. And I just want to understand it. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I wouldn't do it, but I'm not knocking it. I just want to understand why, like from a photographer standpoint, using someone else's face just feels strange to me. And then also from a model standpoint, having some old dude going around with your face on their social media feels weird. You know, I don't know. I don't know. It feels weird to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And it's one of those kind of things that it's a hard conversation to decide, like, oh, what is you really need to talk it out, I guess, is what I'm
Hmm.
saying. We
Yeah.
really need to kind of like fill that up.
This is going to be a debate session on TWiP. I'm definitely going to
Yeah,
schedule this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
But
going
I
to be
agree
a,
with you. I
yeah,
agree with you.
avatar. We'll call it the avatar watermarking, beat down or whatever.
Well, you know, it's a good conversation to have because I have a lot of new photographers that I interact with that put these gigantic watermarks on their photos, and I'd be like, "Do you need that?"
Hmm. Some of
Nobody,
it's
no,
ego, right?
yeah,
Some of it's like, hey, it's my logo, and everyone's gonna know me one day, and I gotta stamp it, and people are gonna know it's me, and all
yeah. It
that.
doesn't work that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a misconception in that image is going to make me money if I let you take it. Depends on your style of work. Depends on
Hmm.
what you do.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I was
Steve
telling Tim,
Brazel
we,
is a good example where, you know, he's putting work out there that magazines and websites and things like that are, because of his live concert photography, they snagged that stuff all the time.
right,
So it makes sense for him to watermark it.
right,
My clientele want to buy a photo and hang it on their wall.
right, right.
So I think it's different for every person.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the conversation. Yeah, maybe we'll see if we can convince Steve Brazel to come in and talk about that too. Because in that genre, you're right. In the genre of concert photography, yeah, it
Oh
seems like
yeah.
I could see the logic. There's a direct vector between, to the logic in that. But something else, like it's submitting an image like this one, that Janet, the Misty Morning image that he submitted. I'm going to bring that back on screen here. like this image, you know, when I looked at it, I first looked at it, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And my eye immediately went up to the right-hand side. I'm like, really? Oh, you know, it's perfect except for that, you know.
I think people just are, they're just nervous. They've read articles, they've seen people that've gotten images stolen, and they get nervous, and then they put their watermarks on there.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you look at like Renee Robbins, if you look at a lot of her work, she puts a watermark on there and she puts it, her name, in a very unique location every single time.
Yep.
And it never detracts from the image.
Right.
So I think if you're going to do a watermark, try to put it someplace that you can be identified if that's your work, that it's not super obvious, that doesn't detract, but people can see, oh, this is, you know, Troy Miller or Frederick Van Johnson or Steve Brazel or Renee Robin, whatever. And that's what the watermark can be there for.
Yeah. And hers, I mean, the other piece of it, I mean, there's multiple dimensions to this, but in the case of Renee Robin, hers is text only. Her logo is text only. And
yeah.
And, you know, maybe we'll have her on to talk about it, because she moves her watermark around, and I'm not sure if she changes the size of it, but she may change the size of it. But she moves it around and puts it in a compositionally sort of interesting location. Yeah, interesting location that it's not necessarily competing with the overall image, but it's still there. So it's like it's part of the work. Almost, versus like, hey, I'm finished with the work, stamp it with my logo and move on to the next one. So,
yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that'll be a valuable topic for people to listen to.
Yeah, right. No, I agree. It'd be a great topic.
All right, let's move on to the next image. This one is from Craig Stampley. He calls this one Dicky Beach Surf. Here we go, Dicky Beach Surf.
Dicky Beach. Good timing. That's the nice thing about sports. We got foreground. Oh, I love that wave in the foreground, the middle ground.
Hey, there's a watermark in there too, by the way.
There's a watermark. Yeah, yeah. He always puts them right there, dead center.
Which, and that one doesn't bother me too much, though. Yeah. Right? I mean, maybe because it's white on lighter colors, but you know, it's kind of, it's not competing with the image.
No, it's not. No, it's really good. Let me move this. Ooh, okay. I was checking to see if there was a spot on my monitor or if it was on the image. So in an image like this, the story is really the surfer. It's really the water. And you could tone it and tweak it and blue up the water or go black and white and do whatever. But I mean, that's all up to the artist. The capture is fantastic. I love his arm out. You know, you can almost see his expression in his face. I love all that. We don't need the sky. The sky really isn't adding anything to this, and I think it's too bright anyway. So let's just crop out the sky right just below the horizon, so it's just water in the sky surfing, which I think would be a killer shot.
I agree, and that's exactly what I said before. Like, one of two things: either crop out the sky completely, which would be my first move, or I don't know, put some clouds in there, because we know you know how to put clouds in.
Yeah, I am better at it, dude. I am getting better.
Put some nice stormy clouds up there, you know, add some tension to the
and also, Craig, if you haven't cleaned your sensor lately, you got a couple dust spots in there.
I see those. Right? Yep.
Yeah.
No, would you, like, in terms of rule of third and compositionally speaking, the quote, I'm holding up quote fingers, the rule is that if you have a subject that's moving in the frame, it should be moving into the frame, versus like this one, he's moving out of the frame. He's trying to escape the frame. If this is the only shot that he has and it's the perfect pose and he wants to use this one, would you use something like content aware scale or fill to add more ocean to the right side to have the subject, to give the subject a place to go? Or what would you do? Or just leave it as is?
I would say with traditional compositional elements, yes, that's what you want to have. However, and I can't tell you what the right way to do this is. Not being a surfer, the surfers want to see the wave. And I don't know, do we want to see where he's coming, or do we want to see the wave in front of him? I know that looking at magazines like Surfer's Journal and things, I'm always looking at the composition thinking, why'd they do that? And a buddy of mine will go, oh, it's the wave, right? Like, we want to see him on the wave.
Right.
So not being a surf photographer, there may be some other rules or some other guidelines that you would apply when you're photographing surfers. But I'm okay with this one. You know, when you tighten up the foreground where he's going into, it tends to add a little bit of tension, and I'm okay with that.
Gives you some motion there. Okay, well, cool.
Yeah,
That's fair. That's fair. Sweet. All right. Well, thanks, Craig, for that. I feel like I've been to Australia looking all of. Well, I kind of been there. Does New Zealand count? I don't know. I think Australians would say no. So,
no, yeah, I don't know well, but
yeah,
no.
they would say no. They would say no. All right. The next image up is from Kyle Nishioka. He titles this one, or has titled this one, Lily Kaleoa.
Yeah, I like that warehouse.
Here we go.
She looks good too.
Yeah. She's not bad.
Yeah.
I like this one because this one, you know, looking at some of the other images that Kyle submits of pretty women, this one is interesting because it's in, I think, you know, thank you, Kyle, for submitting this in the urban decay genre, right? And this fits in that urban decay genre.
Yeah. Forgot. Some of these are from that genre.
Yeah, and this fits in there, but he's using what he already, you know, he's clearly got aptitude for shooting and posing people like this, and this is great. So he's put this juxtaposition of beautiful woman in an area where you kind of want to go save her from that, or ask her to like, please leave here because this is not safe for humans, you know. But yeah, I dig that a lot. You know, from a compositional standpoint, when I'm looking at this, you know, you blow your eyes, and my eye immediately goes to outside. Right. Like to the green and the foliage. And I'm wondering, you know, maybe that could be toned down a little bit so that I'm not distracted so much by that. But I don't know. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. I first of all, I love the shot. I mean, I love the composition, the pose. I like 99%. I would suggest a little bit of pose adjustments, like a bend in her right elbow a little bit, would make her feel a little bit more flowy. And that left hand looks odd coming up on her neck, just kind of out of nowhere. You could easily turn her body towards you know, towards the camera, and then her shoulders back towards the window, and then you could see both arms and those kind of things. And that's just playing with the pose. I would certainly take down the opening and the light that's hitting the concrete in the foreground, so that she's the brightest element, and that way we can see the light coming through, but she's the strongest element in the shot. And I think that would strengthen this up a lot. Yeah. And you could even darken that background a little bit, take it down so you can just barely see it.
You just barely get a hint that it's a distressed warehouse.
Yeah. This is a very cool location.
Yeah, I like it. I want to go there. Well, you probably won't be able to go there because let me read what he wrote, his caption inside of TWiP Pro. He says, I couldn't get out to shoot a new pic for Urban Decay, but the theme did bring to mind this scene from a shoot I did a couple of years ago. This abandoned warehouse is slowly being reclaimed by the surrounding trees, and the view from the back door looks quite surreal. So,
oh, see, maybe it's worth exploring again.
Yeah, very cool. It's got some Hawaii, man. It's got some cool locations to shoot, apparently. Hopefully this one, this is still there, and the lava hasn't eaten this warehouse yet.
I don't think Kyle's on that island. I don't think he's on the big island. I think he's on Oahu.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Kyle, let us know. But I think so.
Yeah, which of those patches of volcanic island do you hang out on?
Yeah.
All right, next image is from Mark Harris. He has titled this one Glamour Girl.
I'm wondering if this is at the Salton Sea. Is this out there? It looks like it would be the Salton Sea.
You're looking at number 8, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This looks like, I mean, there's a lot of this urban decay at the Salton Sea. But you know, maybe because I just posted one of my images from there and I saw this and I'm like, that looks like it. But what a cool creative shot. I'm curious if Mark found it this way or did he put the bike there? You know, not that it's right or wrong. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I just wonder.
Yeah. But when I look at this, I wonder. First of all, I love the shot. The shot is really cool, and it makes me think. You know, how did that bike get there? What is that place? Is that what is that building for? Is that where like teenagers hang out and drink beer on Friday nights or do whatever? You know, what is? So it's making me ask those questions, but at the same time, from a photographic standpoint, I'm wondering what the subject of this image is. Is it both of those things together? And I guess that would go with a narrative. If you were to write a paragraph about this story, you could weave them together. But looking at it look at these two pieces standing on their own, the bike and the little shed there, I'd want to like maybe blur that background a little bit more to draw more attention to the foreground. And then maybe add a little bit more saturation into the bike area itself, because those purple handlebars could pop out of there, and that orange seat could pop a little more, or go the complete opposite direction and desaturate it and go black and white, and pop the contrast on the bike and have a blurry background or slightly blurred background on the warehouse back there. It's a little blurry right now, but just a little bit more so that your eye just instantly goes to that bike and you're like, okay, this is a shot about that tore up bicycle. What do you think?
No, I totally agree. I think that for me, if this was an image that I was going to sit down and edit, I love the fact that the glamour girl padding on the handlebars is one of the brightest elements in the foreground. And then I would grunge this up a little bit with some heavy dodging and burning. If you're in Lightroom, play with clarity a little bit and definitely dehaze. Even selectively within this image, I would bring down the tone of the background. Dodge that lower left corner, dodge that upper right area in the ground and the sky to really just very subtly bring our focus to the bike. And that would dramatically improve this image. And then do the things that you've mentioned on top of that. I think this image would just go so far with that. But I mean, it's such a cool capture. It's really really good image.
Yep. I agree. Cool work, Mark Harris. All right. So the next image here, we're cooking with gas here, man. We're almost halfway through. Yeah. So we are halfway through. So the next image here is from Tim Engel. So, Tim Engel, Tim's stuff is always so good. It's hard to critique it. It just, Tim. So here we go. All right, here's Tim Engel's. This is Tim's son, whom I've met. And
oh, cool.
Yeah, these guys are genetic specimens. These dudes, they are like seriously, like if you were to pour a bunch of DNA together in a petri dish, say I want to create somebody that's really gonna do some cool stuff in the future, this is what you'd make. These guys are awesome.
That's cool. I love the shot. I mean, there is, the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, no, there's no dust spots. There's hardly any flyaway hair. The expression is amazing. The dramatic lighting that's coming across his face. I can see his whole right eye, which is really well done. That's a sort of a nitpick of mine, whether anybody else does or not. I like to see his whole eye on the right-hand side. His right hand, I mean, it's well lit. It's the edge lighting coming from the back right. The only thing that caught my eye right away is that he's not centered in the frame. And it looks like he centered his legs and his head, but his arms and his body is not. So I always center the entire subject, whatever the extremes are. That always feels better to me. But that's a small thing. That's a really small thing.
Yeah, it's definitely a nit. On a shot like this, to make it more symmetrical, especially with both of his shoulders square on in the frame. Yeah, probably centering him in there probably would have been a good idea. But that's a 0.2 second crop in Lightroom. That'll take a second. But yeah, or depending on if he left that space intentionally for some sort of editorial purpose, if this was shot for a magazine or some sort of publication that said, yeah, we're going to need just a little bit of space on the side of the frame for X, Y, and Z, or for the page curl if it's going in a magazine full frame.
Oh yeah, good thought. Yeah, I wouldn't have thought of that.
Yeah. So when they're doing those kinds of layouts, they may ask for a little padding like that, so it would appear in the center of the page if you allow for the bend of the magazine.
Right, right. And very well handled high key background, by the way. That is, it looks like it's easy to do, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
You tend to get flare, or a lot of people don't know how to do it right, and it just doesn't look well. So this is done very, very well. Obviously, Tim knows what he's doing.
Oh, he totally, yeah. And I think what he said when I asked him about this image, this is a 2 light setup. So he's got a piece of sheer material behind the model, behind his son there, with a light behind that, illuminating that surface, and then another main light off to camera left in the foreground, which is the main light, and then I think the third light source is just a reflector. So it's a reflector to fill in some of the shadows. So
Yeah.
2 lights, technically 2 lights, or 3 light sources technically if you count the reflector.
Background light, yeah.
Yeah, or the reflector. Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool stuff, huh? Not bad.
Yeah, no, this is really well done. This is exceptional. This is really good. This is a good example of portrait lighting handled very well. And if you don't do portrait lighting, you're not used to doing portrait lighting, it's not as easy as it looks when you look at the image. It takes quite a bit of skill. So I like it. And I don't like shooting in the studio, so
Yeah.
I did it too long.
I like them both. I mean, you gotta, I like the control of the studio, but I also like the lack of control when you're not in the studio. It's all, as a photographer, you have to, learn how to capture photons wherever they may present themselves.
This is true. Yep. And understanding studio lighting will definitely improve your natural lighting when you go outside, whether you're doing people or landscapes. Understanding how light falls on a subject is much easier learned in a studio, because you can move things around, as opposed to outside. I haven't been able to figure out how to move the sun yet.
Yeah, you need to talk to David Copperfield about that. I think he could probably help you with that one.
Right.
I just recently saw and I hate this because I like sleight of hand and magic and all that stuff. And I was watching this YouTube video that popped up that was revealing all of the different big tricks, like sawing a woman in half, and David Copperfield making the Statue of Liberty disappear, how he did that and all that. You remember seeing that as a kid when he made the Statue of Liberty?
I do. Yeah,
I got to tell you how he did it. I'm going to tell you how he did it because it's online now. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, as a magician, an amateur magician, I'm like, okay, there's sleight of hand, and you got to be able to move this, and you hide it and put this in your pocket. I'm like, how do you do that with an immobile object like the Statue of Liberty? You know what he did?
I have no idea. I can't even imagine.
They had all the press and the audience and everyone on a platform that rotates. So they cover up, they obscure the Statue of Liberty, and they're like, the entire time they're slowly rotating the platform that everyone was on, and no one knew. So when they pull the curtain back, it's gone, but literally it's behind them.
But wouldn't everybody on the platform know you're rotating the platform?
Not if you do it slow enough and you're not expecting it. You don't know, right? So.
I guess that's true. Hey, that's the cleverness of it, right?
That's so cool. Yeah, that's so cool. Love it. All right, cool. All right, let's blow through the rest of these. The next one is from Matthew Moore. He calls this one El Capitan Hotel. El Capitan Hotel.
Yeah. Nice urban decay. I like that. I like that. See, that's the kind of place you want to go sneak in with models or something.
Right? Yeah, no, absolutely.
I love the foreground element. I love the truck. I wish the truck was moving, so we had some additional element in there of motion or something.
Yeah.
But the graphical element of this is really cool. Really cool. I would suggest black and white on this. I mean, right from the get-go, this is a very graphical element. The colors aren't adding anything to this. I like the truck in the foreground. Maybe clean up that light trap in the lower left-hand corner. That's a bit distracting. But nice vertical lines, well-handled composition. But try black and white, and then edge it up a little bit, more contrast, maybe a little bit of noise. Really add. For me, the capture is only half of my creative process. So I look at an image and I'm thinking, okay, this is going to look really good, edited such and such way. That helps me tell the rest of my story. So if you're standing there and you're looking at this thing and you really want to convey how big it is or how edgy it is or how, distressed it is, you may have to add those elements in post to help convey to the viewer what it is that you saw when you photographed it.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. My comments on this one, similar to yours. I'd want to see, like, I feel like I'm tight. I feel like it's constrained. Like, I want to see the entire building if I could. So if you like zoomed out a little bit to show the left and right side or the corners of the building. But yeah, absolutely. If this was more grungy and black and white, because the color, the beige of the building and the truck don't really work to tell the story of what's going on here. It's more about the elements within there, like that exposed brick on the fascia there, and the rubble in the foreground, all that stuff. But if it were black and white, you could have pumped up and maybe made that sky a little bit more dramatic, especially if you had zoomed out a little bit. Made the sky a little bit more dramatic and punchy, and then, like you're saying, add a little more grunge to it. It would have really spoken to, hey, this place is seen better days.
Yeah, so if you're processing this in Lightroom, just go to the HSL panel and go to luminance and pull the blue slider down, and that'll darken that sky up when you go to black and white, and that sky's going to go dark. The building's going to come forward and pop. I think you're going to get a better story, a better edginess out of this image.
Love it.
I like it. Yeah, no, very good. Very good. I like the crop, by the way. I kind of like it tight.
You do like it tight? Okay.
I do. Yeah. And chances are it's on a construction site, so there's probably lots of stuff around it.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Subjectivity. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes.
All right. Next shot. That one's from Matthew Moore. The next shot is from Joe J. He calls this one Silhouette Saxophone. Silhouette Saxophone. What do you think of this one?
Love it. I like it. I like it a lot. Very cool shot. Silhouettes are challenging, especially when you put the sun in there and you tend to get that flare, which can add to the image. In this case, I think some of those flare spots are detracting from the image only because they're on his knee and then they're on the saxophone itself. Definitely things that you can fix. I would say take this exposure down a lot more. We're not getting detail in his shirt or his face anyway. So let's really go silhouette. And then when you're shooting an image like this, and this is why critiques can be helpful, is that hand railing is going right through his waist, which is a bit distracting. So I would say shoot much lower. Try to get at least his upper body above that handrail and put the sun behind the saxophone, so you still get the backlit effect, you still get that flare, but you're not going to get the flare spots on the lens in the image, and I think it'll silhouette really nice. But this is a cool image. Maybe a little crop if you keep it just this way, too much space on the right and the bottom.
Yeah, tighten it up a little bit.
Yeah, tighten it up. But I mean, it's a great photojournalistic storytelling type of image.
Totally. Yeah. Joe says, I just realized I posted the wrong image. Oh, he had posted one and then reposted this one. He said this was taken the day after he watched a webinar on silhouettes by Valerie Jardin. And then
cool.
He headed down to the river Thames at sundown for interesting opportunities with the low sun and to put some of what he learned from Valerie into practice. So very cool.
Hey, fantastic. Yeah, very successful image.
Yep, very cool. Good job. Good job taking that knowledge that you just learned and that excitement and putting it into practice immediately. That's important.
Yeah. It doesn't do us any good if we don't go out and put a battery and a card in the camera, right?
That's right. Yeah. Knowledge very rarely does anything the longer it marinates. Doesn't make for a tastier outcome.
Another one of your sayings. I mean, my God.
I don't know where these sayings come from. They just pop into my head, man.
Oh my God.
All right. This next image is from Steven. He calls this one Silo City.
Man, this is cool.
It is.
This is so cool.
Yeah. I even like the matting, the framing of it. Yeah, it's really
I do. Yeah. not having seen these before, I'm just kind of taking this in, right away. And I tend to think things through as I talk. So that's kind of how I figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
This image almost demands symmetry. And what I mean by that is in the bottom, you can see the reflection is almost touching the edge. In the top, there's more space.
Mm-hmm.
I would say find them so that they balance exactly the same. Don't worry about where the horizon line is. Make that reflection in the building the same. Maybe add a little space on the bottom and then crop in the top so that symmetry is just really screaming at you solid. And there's really not a whole lot else. Maybe bring in a little bit of clarity or dehaze or something and try to get that sky to pop a little bit more. But
yeah,
this is great. The reflection is fantastic. That is just such a cool building.
Yeah, this is one of those images I have very little input on because it is fantastic. I love it. I mean, his lines are straight up and down. He's symmetrical. Yeah, I'm on adding more space in the bottom or cutting more space off the top. I like it like this. To be honest with you, I actually like having a little bit more space at the top there, just to emphasize that, hey, that's the sky up there and this was down here. But I like it. Yeah, maybe a little bit of clarity in there, but no, he did a fantastic job on this one. In TWiP Pro, he wrote, for the urban decay theme, Silo City Sunrise, the abandoned grain elevators at Silo City, Buffalo, New York.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and I was going to say, quality of light in this one is really nice, which is often ignored in landscape type photographs where people just kind of shoot what's there. Just like in a portrait session, quality direction of light matters a lot. And had this been shot at high noon or had the sun been directly behind him, this image would have been completely flat. Yeah. And because the sun is off to his left and lighting, the broad side of the building and the short side of the building is in shadow, it gives dimension. Shadows tell us things have dimension, and that is so important when you're shooting landscapes. And sometimes we don't have time to come back to a spot and shoot it in the perfect light, but when you can, that's great. And good job for Stefan for going out and doing that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, go shoot this one more. This one is, I would spend a lot of time at this at this facility, sunrise, sunset, when the weather's nasty, go back.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, grungy rain, and yeah, that would be really cool. You're good. You did a fantastic job on that one. All right, so the next one up is from Craig Stampley again. All right, and he calls this one Powerhouse Back Wall. Powerhouse Back Wall.
It's so cool.
There we go. Let's bring that up. Look at that.
Yeah, this is great. I
all the lines and textures and yeah.
It looks like he I'm wondering if he pushed the red on that pipe or if that was freshly painted. Either way, I don't care. I think it's awesome that red pipe is in there. My only suggestion to this would be maybe crop off the left side right to the post on the handrail, the big post, because from there to the right, it's full of pipes and panels and lights and pipes and doors, and then it ends at the top right corner with that pipe. But the left, I don't know. I mean, I'm holding my hand up and looking at it. I think if we cropped it to the left a little bit, crop off the left a little bit, it would be a little bit stronger image, but that's being very subjective.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, right? Subjectivity. Yeah, I like this. I don't know. I like the geometrical shapes in here, the diagonals, circulars on the upper right, you know, the grid of the bricks, and this kind of image takes a photographer to be walking by and to notice that there is something there in the obscurity of what normal, thousands, millions of people probably walk by this every day and not see anything. It takes a photographer to walk by and say, "Oh, look at that. That's interesting."
Yes, and to execute the capture well, because this isn't just the snapshot. I mean, it may be a snapshot, but somebody who is skilled can see this. If you notice, all the vertical lines are vertical, all the horizontal lines are horizontal. Um, he either made a very strong effort to get in the very center and tilt the camera correctly so that it didn't distort or didn't get parallax and things, or he corrected some of that later in post. Either way, it's an eye to detail that is often missed in images like this.
Yep. Yep. I agree. Cool. Sorry about my phone ringing. That was a contractor trying to disturb me. All right. So the next one is from, let's see. Yeah, this is Chuck Myers. This is Big Sur Sunset. Oh, back on Craig's shot, he says, for Urban Decay, this is from Brisbane Powerhouse, which was transformed from an unused power station to a bustling multi-arts venue. It holds the Canon World Press Photo Exhibition every year.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Very appropriate. That's cool.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. The next image is from Chuck Myers. And Chuck says, let's bring this up here. Chuck says in TWiP PRO, he says, I realize this is an extremely well photographed location. However, I tried to incorporate some of your notes from my previous photo critique submittal and would be interested to hear what you think of this shot. What do you think?
I love it. It's spectacular. So it's very, very well handled. The sunset is well handled. The composition is really, really nice. Good time of day. You know, not just sunset anytime, but there's clouds. That's fantastic. I'm wondering what this looked like 15 minutes later, just before the sun actually dipped below the horizon. The light softens up, or immediately after the sun has set, and you get sort of that glow the last 10 or 15 minutes after the sunset.
Right.
Can add another effect. I mean, these are the kind of scenes that I don't ever walk away from until my wife drags me by the hair. Well, no, not by the hair. I don't have any hair. You know,
by the singular hair.
Drag me by the beanie. Yeah. A couple quick suggestions, and these are minor to be sure.
Yep.
Is I think that the lower left corner has been burned in, but probably a bit too heavy. That's, you know, that you have the right idea, burn that in, but also get some of that ground in there, and make sure when you're burning things in like that, it's really subtle. And then also I might crop off the left side a little bit because you did a long exposure, you have some plants that moved.
Oh,
and
right. Get a little blur.
I would maybe crop that in till you don't see the plants that moved.
Yeah.
And then another challenging thing to do, and it's often hard on water, is to remove little flare spots and things like that. But I think if you were to clean up some of those little circular flares around the sun, in the sky, and in the water, they're not going to be distracting anymore. And it's really going to be the sunset, the rocks, the water, just a little bit of cleaning. You've got a dust spot on the left-hand side. Yep. In the sky, there's a couple dust spots.
Yeah.
Just
easy stuff
little
to fix.
things.
And little tweaks. Yeah. That looks good. I agree with you on the crop too. And the lower left-hand burn in a little bit. It is a little dark and adds a little bit of distraction to the overall nicely balanced image.
Yep.
And if bringing a crop in a little bit, it would almost be square. I mean, if you brought it in, so it makes me think of would this look better square, or would it look better? And this is I'm couching all this with, this is a great image. It doesn't really need anything.
Right.
But if you were to do something to it, if you cropped in from the left side there and made it more of a square, how would that look? Or if you cropped in from the bottom and made more of a panoramic type shot, where it's more elongated and rectangular, would that add more impact to it and more grandeur to it? But either way, it's a fantastic image. This definitely feels like California. But
yeah, and to be clear to Chuck and anybody else, this is the last 10%. Of an image like this. This image is exquisitely well done. I always try to remove as much of a distracting element as possible. No matter how good the image is, the more distracting elements I can remove, no matter how small they are, the less that even the average viewer is not going to be drawn to. And that's really what we're talking about. You burn down the rocks a little bit. You really bring the focus to the sun, get rid of those, blurry things here, a little spot here. And what that does is it just gives the viewer the ability to just dive into this and not see those things.
And how do you feel about the watermark on this one?
It's a watermark, and I think people, feel comfortable marking those. When I do my watermarks, I try to do them at like 40-50%.
Because opacity.
Yeah. And here's one of the reasons why is I'm hoping if somebody steals my image, they don't notice it.
He's going to sneak it in there.
So if it's subtle, it doesn't distract from the image. And two, if they can't see where it's at or they can't find it easily, then I might be able to catch them. And I have, actually. I have.
They're like, hey, I didn't steal that. That's not your image. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like these signature, I don't know. This whole thing is subjective, right, with watermarks.
Yep.
But the signature watermarks don't really bother me as much as I think graphical logo-based ones do. I don't know why. Maybe it's because a signature one feels more like, hey, this was a work of art and I'm signing it for you, versus this is my corporate brand and I'm stamping it on this piece that is one of a gazillion. I don't know.
Are you talking about my logo? Is that what you're doing? Now you're
I don't know, am I?
Mine is
Is that the telltale heart beating right there? I hear.
That's mine. Yeah. Oh no. Mine is definitely a logo.
Yeah. This is gonna be a show. You're gonna be on that show when we talk through this. Okay, so that's Chuck Myers' Big Sur Sunset. Let's move on to, speaking of Troy Miller. This is a Troy Miller image with no watermark on it. Look at that.
No watermark.
This is from Troy Miller. Troy Miller has titled this one Abandoned Salton Sea. Abandoned Salton Sea.
Yeah. Well, I can't critique it, but
you can critique this, whatever. Oh, I'll critique it for you. Can I critique it for
you? You critique it. And I will say that if anybody's been to Salton Sea, I think that I think it was Mark Harris made a comment on this about Salton Sea. A lot of this area is been torn up by a restoration process, and you can see it in the far distance. You see these little horizontal like dirt piles, like just above the picnic table there along that edge, and that's them digging these huge trenches to try to bring water in to flood this area.
Yeah.
And those trees are famous. A lot of people photograph those trees, but now it looks awful. So
no, I haven't been to Salton Sea. What is it? Is it actually a sea back there on the horizon, or are these salt lake? Is this a salt bed? What is it?
So far to the right is where the water is.
Okay.
And it's a sea, I guess, because of size. Whether it's a sea or a lake or a pond, it's all based on volume and size and square footage and stuff. But it's really quite big. It's very, very long and wide. It's a desolate. It's like, this is what the world's going to look like when nature takes over and man is gone and we've broken everything. It usually smells terrible. It's dusty. There's dead fish everywhere, and not just dead fish, like they're carcasses when you walk on the shoreline. It looks like sand. It's not sand. It's the broken down skeletons of the fish, because they spawn, they get really, they populate the sea, and then they die from lack of oxygen, I think it is, in the water. Anyway, it's
I love depressing, man.
No, it's great.
It's like, it stinks and it's full of death, but it's beautiful.
Well, plus there's a lot of story in Salton Sea. It was at one time, it was a big recreational community. They wanted it to, they were, boating and all this kind of stuff, and it failed. It didn't work for many reasons.
Yeah.
But things like this, somebody built this, and this was meant to go have a picnic by the water, and now this is what you're left with. And I just love photographing that stuff.
I love it. Yeah. When I looked at this, I love the symmetry of it. I love the kind of sepia treatment that you've done here to emphasize the desolation. it's uniform, yet you're you're showing that there is dilapidation here because there's this picnic bench and the cover on it is kind of leaning in sort of a trapezoidal type pattern.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you know, like
scary.
you add the tension to it, like, yeah, you can go sit there, but you may be part of this landscape after you sit there.
Well, I parked my truck just to the left of this, and then I got out and I saw this. I went, "Oh, that's cool." I took a shot. And I went, "I'm gonna move my truck."
You probably would move your little gust of wind. You know what this reminded me of also? Well, Mad Max, and I know you like Mad Max stuff, so that instantly came to mind. That sort of dystopian, the world in distress kind of feel. But also, I don't know if you remember way back in I think it was the 80s or maybe early 90s, there was a video with Michael Jackson and Naomi Campbell, and they shot it in an area with this kind of color treatment to the whole video. It's called "Remember the Time," I think it was. Maybe it was "Remember the Time."
I don't recall.
I don't remember.
Find it.
I'll put a link to it in the notes for this episode. But it was very similar to this. And look, when I saw this kind of treatment, it made me think of that video. So yeah, it's really cool. I like it. Good job. Good job. But you know what's missing though. You know what's missing.
It's missing a model.
A model.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, come on. You could have put your wife in here, your daughter, somebody in here to add a human element to it. So.
I know.
Yeah, no,
they don't always want to be photographed every time they're with me.
Well, I mean, I think that goes with the territory, right? So,
yeah.
It's like I love LA, but you know this traffic thing, we got to get rid of it.
Right.
No, it's very cool shot. And then the next shot is from Tim Engel. He calls this one "Long Walk." Long walk. Look at that. Outside of his comfort zone, which is normally we see people from Tim. Now we see a shot with no people in it. Look at that.
I'm assuming this is his urban decay image. Yeah.
Walk the plank.
Yeah, walk the plank. I love these kind of shots. I really do, because I'm a big fan of like symmetry and leading lines and things that go off into an infinite point. I would probably grunge this up a little bit more contrast. It looks like there's some grain in it, so maybe he was shooting low light and he pushed it. I would even go so far as to remove the elements on the right, like the houses on the shore, and then steal that and flip it over on the left. And get rid of the boats and everything, and just make this thing just go off into this cloudless infinity.
So you're saying remove the boats on the left hand side, or copy and flip them and put them on the right as well.
No, I'd remove the boats.
Oh, just get them out of there. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, and then on the right hand side, we have that tree line. I'd take all the houses out, and I would use that and flip it and put it over on the left and blend it in, so that you just had this sort of odd, scary, mirror thing happening on the horizon, but yet the pier or whatever this walkway is, it's not mirrored, it's different. I love that kind of thing, so I would do that. But speaking to the image the way that we have it in front of us, I dig it. I would grunge it up a little bit, push the blacks a little bit more, and little but subtle, super subtle. The way it is though, it's really nice.
And no model.
No model. Yeah, no model.
Good. Yeah, I agree. This one's art too, much like that image from that we looked at earlier, the Awesome Blossom one from Andy S.
Yeah.
I think this one would look crazy big, right? Like it would look awesome if this was blown up wall sized. Yeah, because it's already got that sort of grandeur feel to it, but if it was printed big, like wall sized, it would really draw you into it and almost make you want to walk the plank, right?
Yeah. And what I wonder how this would look is if you had knelt down and shot at the ground level. And because this thing is so long, that infinite point in the distance, eventually the lines are going to converge, and that's just
this makes me want to like go there, put the camera on a tripod, and do multiple exposures with someone doing different things at different points down the path.
Oh, yeah, walking down there.
Yeah, walking down, looking over, sitting down on the phone.
So many possibilities right here. So many.
Yeah. This is what it's all about. It's photography.
Yeah, this is great. This is great. Good job, Tim.
All right, we got one more to get through. You ready for this last one?
I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
All right, this one is from Fizz. Fizz says, I got this on my first trip to Ocean City, Maryland this Saturday. Now, please excuse me as I continue to clean the sand off my tripod.
Yeah.
All right, so let's bring this one up. If I can get to
Sand is no fun.
Oh, wait, hold on. What did I do? Okay, there we go. All right, here we go.
Yeah, good shot. I love all the colors. I love the symmetry, the balance. What a neat location. I I would probably suggest shooting from a lower angle to make the building really stand up and show that boardwalk off. You know, make the boardwalk your foreground, your main subject, and then the building higher in the back. But the way that the image is presented to us here, I think I would have preferred a longer exposure. Right? Let that Ferris wheel in the back.
Oh, you know, blur really, a little bit more, assuming it's moving.
Yeah, assuming it's moving. But if we're going to work with this image, I would probably crop off the right side a little bit. Could we crop out that light maybe right to the edge, and then the left side, crop out those two lights down the fence line and really focus on the building? Those are things that it's hard to say until you actually do it and look at it. But the way it's presented, I love the colors, and
yeah, it makes me want to go there for real. You know, when I look at a shot like this, I always wonder. Like, I agree with you. I would probably crop just a little bit off the right side there. Although he may be, you know, the artist Fizz may have wanted to include those people that are walking along the boardwalk. Right.
And that's an appropriate element. That's a nice element to add.
Yeah, because it adds to the scale and it gives you an idea of how big this thing is or how small it is. But when I look at this, I wonder, like, would it have been better? And I'm legit asking this question. Like, would it have been better to fix the parallax on this image, to have the lines going vertical? Like, you see how those poles on the right side are leaning in, and the light poles on the left are leaning in. Everything's kind of converging in the middle. Would have been better to use Lightroom or Capture One or whatever tool you're using to straighten all that up so that everything in the image, at least on the outside that's there, is perpendicular. Or would that have taken away from the image? I wonder. I don't know the answer to that. I'm just wondering. And if you had done that, if you had straightened the poles up on the left and the right hand side, then I think it would have been obvious that, okay, that light on the left and the lights on the right are probably too close to the sides of the frame. So you would probably want to crop in a little bit to get rid of them, and then would have made sense to do it anyway.
And I would suggest that it depends on the story you want to tell. If it's a creepy, you know, if there's a clown in there, or there's like, you know, the watching man in there, or there's something strange going on in there, then you know, the parallax, the distortion adds to the eeriness of the image, right? But if maybe it's a commercial shot, maybe this is more documentarian, then you would want to correct those lines for sure, depending on what you want. And this image could handle either one.
Yeah, I wonder, like, because right now, it's funny you say that with the clown in there, right? So I wonder, like, right now, it doesn't feel creepy at all. It just feels like, hey, this was, you know, probably a family having fun at night at this location, at Ocean City. But what if you decided to do an interpretation of this image? Maybe that's a future contest or something, different interpretations of an image. If you did a different interpretation of this image and you decided, okay, this interpretation is normal, I'm going to do a creepy version. I'm going to do a Pennywise version of this image. You know, what would that look like? You know, how would you adjust your edit in order to pull out and convey creepy or sinister in an image like this? That'd be an interesting test, right? To see if people could do that, like from any image where you submitted. Like, if you go back to like Kyle's image with the woman in the distressed warehouse, right? You do one image, you do one edit, which is like this, and you do another edit where, okay, you need to make it look like she's in imminent danger or distress. How would you edit it?
I love that concept. I did an image for image competition, and I added a creepy shadow on the corner, like around the corner of the building, and nobody saw it, but the people who saw it was like, oh, that's scary. Like there's a couple on one side of the corner and this creepy shadow or this weird guy. Like, yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff. So like the one with Kyle, you could put a guy in the background, just like standing there, like in Fringe, the watching men,
right?
The watchers. Yeah. Yep. Just standing there with his notepad.
Right. I'm gonna bring his up again just so that we can talk about that. Yeah, so I have Kyle's back up on the screen again. Yeah, you could have like, there's so much you could do with this now. And look at it with creepy eyes, right? So out in the foliage, you could have somebody out there that shouldn't be out there, or that's interesting. Maybe we'll do something like that around October, for a Halloweenish theme.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, you know what? We should do that, and we should announce that now, so that people have time to work on that, right? Like several months or whenever. But
maybe we'll do some examples too, because I could see, because I want to see. Maybe it's multiple, because I like, as my brain cranks through this, you can see my thought process of, okay, here's an image. Now your job is to interpret it in these 3 ways or these 2 ways, and give them 3 words to interpret the image into. That would be interesting, and that would be a stretch. That'd be a good exercise for your editing and compositional and just using color or not to elicit certain feelings. That's like
right.
That feels like a film school kind of test there.
I like it.
Very cool. All right, man. We're through all of these images. We got through 17. I think this is a TWiP Pro record of images that we've gotten through today. Any final thoughts before we shut it off?
No. Good job. Good rising to the challenge of the dystopian grunge abandoned theme. I think it's your turn to pick a theme now for another one.
Yes, I think let's do that right now. Okay, so I think you did grunge, right? So my theme is going to be, let's see, emotion.
Emotion.
My theme is emotion. For the very next critique, your assignment is to capture emotion. And that's
going to be good.
Yeah, I'm not going to get any more direction. But I will say, emotion doesn't necessarily have to come from a human or a person or a biological entity. It could come from anything. So
fair enough.
Emotion is the topic for the next one. Cool. All right, man. I think that's it. Thanks a lot, Troy. We'll see you next time.
You got it, buddy.
All right. Peace. This is TWiP.